Veena Ganesh, please. Prateek Kumar. Mohandas Pai.
Nice to see you.
And my incredible colleague from China, Louisa Wong, who I've been dying to meet for a long, long time. Louisa, welcome.
Hi, Mo.
I'm going to take the easy way out while these wonderful bios play out. I'm just going to say they don't need introduction. They don't. All of them are familiar, well-known faces, and it's going to be, I think, great fun and very interesting to listen to what they have to say about the panel, about this topic for discussion. Our panel actually covers quite a center stage topic and something that we're all interested to know a little bit about. How does India Inc. discover super confident, high-performing business leaders given the VUCA environment? I'm very pleased we've got an anagram I can actually remember. So volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The session will be about 30 minutes, and we have a few minutes after that for a quick Q&A, so I hope you have your questions ready. Panel, we can't wait to hear your collective thoughts on the subject, and it's a very relevant topic as well. So, Suresh, you have the floor. Suresh is on the moderating seat, so hold on to your seats. And over to you, Suresh.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you very much, panelists. It's a wonderful, diverse group of people. My job is easy. All I need to do is to trigger some nice conversations. I don't think anyone needs any introduction. They are so eminent. You know, ladies and gentlemen, from a search consulting firm's analysis point of view, from the way we've interacted with Indian corporates, we foresee a big leadership crisis coming up. As the founding generation CEOs or the owners go into the twilight of their career, there is definite vacuum at the top. It's not only the CEO, but it's the other SBU heads and leadership of functions. We get a lot of queries about how to fill up not just one position, but a whole slab of positions. I want to throw open the conversation by starting by requesting Mohan, who has been at the helm of such a famous company and who has handled many a leadership crisis, I'm sure. None of them may have been out in the open, which is not the case now that he's not there. I want to ask you, Mohan, is Indian companies, especially tech sectors, prepared for generating or minting next generation of leaders?
Suresh, let me give you an example from the cricket world. In the late 70s and 80s, you had the West Indies team, which annihilated the rest of the world. Nobody stood up to them. Then they imploded. Then you had the Aussies, who became a great team, and nobody could stand up to them. And they were the world leaders. Then they imploded. We're seeing something like this in the tech industry. In the last 15, 20 years, we had an extraordinary group of people who came together in many companies. They grew the corporation. They stayed on too long. So when you stay on too long, for 15 years as the same team, you lose a couple of generations of people below you who have different aspirations, or they don't come up. And if you look at the West Indies team, maybe they missed a couple of generations of players. You look at the Aussie team today, they're struggling because these top-ranking guys who came together stayed on too long, and the people below couldn't come up. Even in India, I think Sachin stayed on too long, and in the last 2-3 years, he really didn't score. So unless you have these great people, I mean, Rahul knew when he had to go, and I think, I must admire his extraordinary ability to assess himself. And I think, Rahul, the day you missed, you got bowled 4 times in Australia, you must have said, my eye is not seeing the ball.
Thank you for reminding me. I just gotten over the nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, you see, the CEOs have to decide when they have to go. And if they don't go, they destroy the team. So now you have to see this transition and the transformation from a high-growth sector, which has grown so fast, which has had a great stability in the management, And the stability has been a reason for their high growth, and they're globally dominant with 52% of the world's outsourcing market. Now they have to give way. Now, I don't accept your contention that the next level don't have people. They're extraordinary people. They just don't have their day in the sun. So I think once you give them an opportunity, like Rahul said, blood them, I mean, they'll do well. They may misstep something. I mean, look at Pratik's company. You had a person nobody spoke of, is done reasonably well, and is doing very well now, even though he says he's a bit tired now. But so I think you got to give them the chance, Suresh. I'm not so worried.
Not so worried, okay. Now, is it that the senior leaders didn't make room for the others, or is it that the whole environment changed, that the proven leadership process is failing? Because, you know, you see like it happened in cricket, all of a sudden the cricket has become such a frenzy game. It's more entertainment than technicalities. Even in business, things have changed so drastically. Your traditional process of making codes work and making offshore work or making India supply side work has changed, leading to different things.
I know it's changed. So I would still say they saw the writing on the wall, but stayed on too long till the market forced some of them to change. And I think they're changing very rapidly. But what has happened in the tech world today is that they've grown to be a dominant part of the market, so that there's been a change there needs to be a change in the strategy from delivery to sales. And sales is all about facing the customer, so they need to change the leadership to people who can go and sell and meet people and enthuse the force and go away from the back end and the delivery. It's an industry which grew up from the bottom. They were all bottom feeders. They've gone to the middle. Now they had to be at the enterprise level. Enterprise level, the business has changed. And in the midst of this change, from a generation which has been so very successful globally, no country has had the success India has had in the tech industry. Let's say that very clearly. And they're great entrepreneurs. So they have to change. Their business has changed. So you're in a bit of a flux. But please remember, the people who are left, they've gone out to be CEOs of many other companies. They're doing quite well.
Taking what you're saying, let me turn it to Pratik, another technology industry grooming that you've had. Do you think this whole concept of rainmaking and bringing the growth rates into what the analysts and the investor community expects and the board expects, do you think Indian CEOs have it in them to go out in international territory? I'm not saying they can't, but do you think they can match shoulder to shoulder what's done internationally? Or are we more technical, or are we more operational, or more delivery-centric and supply-centric? But do you think we are trained enough to be the top dogs in the global markets?
But that's the clear shift which even Mohan was referring to. I mean, we were so supply constrained for a very long time, and demand was just coming in. At some stage, there are a lot of companies who perhaps did not read the writing on the wall, and they were taken by surprise. They did not have people at the helm who could actually switch gears, so to speak. And without doubt, in today's market, and especially which is evolving so quickly, the critical need of the leader out there would be to be able to understand how those market shifts are taking place, the customer needs, how those are evolving, and how do you actually build those capabilities within the organization. So the person pretty clearly has to be out there. And I think there are a lot of leaders, without taking specific names across the larger companies also, some of them are doing exceptional job. Some of the successes which we have seen in the tech sector of companies who actually rose to prominence certainly had that at the very top. So I do not think there is any lack in the ability of those leaders to be able to take on. That's a requisite skill which will actually define the success going forward without doubt. But we do got to actually remember one thing, Suresh. And I'm sure Rahul will also agree, at the end of the day, it cannot only rest with the captain of the team, right? The captain of the team can actually do as much in being able to actually hold those client relationship, and with reference to business, the CEO. But it's got to be the rest of the team which has also need to be aligned to be able to deliver. And same needs to, so the superheroes, the guys who actually grab the headlines in the Economic Times or wherever, that's fantastic, right? You can actually be the rainmaker and get the next billion-dollar deal coming in. But you got to actually have the rest of the team aligned behind you to be able to deliver. And if you don't have that, I do not think you would be able to actually pull along too long for yourself or for the team.
No, absolutely. I want to turn it to you, Luisa. You come from an economy which has done so robustly well. We all admire China. It needs no introduction of what has happened in the infrastructure and in the manufacturing and in now lately services, consumer side. Amazing, amazing stories. There was one point of time, historically, we were talking China and India together, but now we don't get clubbed because you guys didn't like us or we didn't like you. It doesn't get clubbed along. So how do you guys do it in leadership areas? Although majority of China is still state-run, state-controlled, but there are some amazing private companies. In the internet, the companies are almost matching one-to-one on what's happened in the US. And the whole world is now learning to eat a dim sum in place of a burger and drink Chinese tea instead of Pepsi and Coke. So there is a upliftment of Chinese leaders in the world business. There's a visibility. If you go to London, the Canary Wharfs, buildings are owned by Chinese. The whole things have turned in your favor. So how does Chinese organization process ensure not only business-wise, investment-wise, capital allocation-wise, all that you do great, but leadership is also something which you always have in the corner of your mind and produce some great leaders? Or don't you, and it happens naturally? I just want to turn that question to you.
Hi, thanks, Suraj. I really wish that, that China does produce big,
That's why I asked,
business
don't you?
leader. If you look at the Fortune 500 CEO, I don't think I can count 2 or 3 in my numbers. I don't really think China, as successful as China as an economy, as a country is, it is not known to be producing best leader. I do think that in today's world, and applied to India, that it is not about Chinese or Indian, it's about the world need leaders. Because I think that first we are looking at a globalized world, and it is not about whether IT or Indian will step out of its comfort zone. Is that there are 3 things I believe that there will be only one leadership profile, whether you operate in India or you operate in China. And that is everyone in the world is going to step on one another's toes because we need your customer. We're going to sell to consumer. That will be the first time they use our products. The world is definitely a globalized world. And that also, as Kuchihara-san said, there are no boundary. There are no boundary because of the technology that we have. And also, as far as I'm concerned, we all live in one world. And so therefore, I believe that the world will probably need the kind of profile of leadership that can embrace consumer as a whole, and not just Indian consumer or Chinese consumer. I think that not only that, I think that we all know that it is not about capital talent, it's about global, the war of talent. And I think that whether China actually can win that war or Indian can win that war, this is today is not so much about a supply chain. This is a supply chain of talent. And I think that we all know that the generation Y or the young people that comes up to, you can spot the next winner, the next Rahul of the world. I think that today the young minds are all looking for very different things. I think in this room we can say that the generation to come are very motivated by very different motives, and that we need to address to that, and we need to embrace that. As leader today, I think that it's very important that we can, in this spotlight, because leader in any world is going to be under spotlight, where we're going to be under scrutiny, not by ourselves, but by a lot of the time young leaders to come. And that for us as a global leader, we're going to be able to not only, like Rahul said, integrity, humility, but more importantly, we need to reinvent ourselves. Our ability to reinvent ourselves every day. I think that perhaps the Chinese probably can do a little bit better. We continuously reinvent ourselves, and that whether we're young, we become old, or we old, become young. I think that ability to adapt and reinvent ourselves Chinese, perhaps that's a little bit better. But not only that, I think that in this world, as Rahul is saying, that we have mega trends in this world that make us all want to make this world a little bit better. The mega trends of, whether it will be a middle class becoming, most of them come from this part of the world, or the aging population, the mega trend of resources limited. I think everyone, every country, every company must embrace that we need to somehow contribute to make sure that this kind of world mega trend will not only provide opportunities, but definitely a responsibility for every country, for every company to participate in this inevitable journey of mega trend that will happen in this world. And I think China probably, because China is big like India, China is complex like India, China has legacy and tradition like India. So if we can succeed in China, there's a high probability that we can succeed in the world. And likewise, I would say in India as well, and that is our advantages, whether we like to think this way, but I do believe that if we can succeed in India and succeed in China, the odds are with us.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I want to shift to Meena. You've been everything. You've been an entrepreneur. They say entrepreneur is not necessarily someone who can kickstart a company and grow it, but entrepreneur is someone who can also sell the company. And you sold the company twice, I think. And you also worked as a professional in a leading company called Tesco. There's a big syndrome in India, which probably is not true in any part of the world, is whether owner, founder, promoter runs the company capably, can he be replaced by a professional CEO? Can he ever be substituted in the way the decisions are made and some of the initiatives are taken? One is the decision itself, second is the follow-through. Those are something which we can't replace. So can we say that that phase will one day have to be addressed and the time has come now? You've been both, so what do you think?
It's a very good question, Suresh, that as an entrepreneur, okay, you think that you're the only person who has all the answers because it's your passion which has given rise to the company. You have put the whole team together, you had the vision, you raised money from VCs by pitching your story, so you think the whole world rests on your shoulder, right? And you take it as far as you can. But there always comes a day when you know that what you created is probably grown bigger than you, okay? Perhaps you can take it few more steps, but you may need to find somebody, a better house for that, where this whole company can actually grow and realize its full potential. So every one of our companies, whether it's Customer Asset or Marketix or Tutor Vista, found a home which is taken it to a much, much bigger level than what we would have as entrepreneurs been able to take it. Now, that's not easy, right? And I'm sure that is very relevant even when you're in a large corporate. You realize that perhaps you've reached the limitations of how far you can vision and how big you can make the company. I was with Tesco where the CEO at that time, he moved on and we got a new CEO and the whole company has completely changed. But that was the need of the hour at that time. He'd been there and he had done remarkable work over the 14 years that he was there to build the company. But a new CEO has come because the whole environment has changed. It made sense. So, but as an entrepreneur, recognizing that moment when you think you need to step back or you need to move on and give the company over to another is not easy. There are enough people who don't judge it right, and hence what happens is they leave the company to be in a sort of Trishanku, to use a very, very typical Indian word, which is you're neither in heaven nor in hell, you're sort of stuck in the middle, right? So if you don't take that opportunity, you don't see that thing coming, You leave the company in a stage where it cannot grow to its full potential. You're holding on to it for dear life because you think you're the best person for that, but that's not true. So either you have that realization or somebody has to hit you on the head and tell you, either which way it has to happen. Sometimes the investors will give you a slap on the head and say, you know what, you got to move on. If that doesn't happen, you need to have the realization, but there is always a place when you have to take that decision.
Suresh, can I make a
Yeah,
point?
sure, of course, yeah.
If you study the history of great corporations, most of them have been founded by one individual or a couple of individuals. But those who have been successful have made a transition from a very entrepreneur-driven corporation to a corporation where the entrepreneur becomes a manager, then the entrepreneur becomes an investor. So you are a person who starts the company, puts money into it, and then you become a manager by getting money from outside. You're not essentially 100% owner, and she's done that, and that's very good, and the lesson for all of us. And then at one point of time, you become an investor, and that she's sold out, that's different, but you become an investor and retain. You look at Walmart, the family is doing very well. Look at the Ford family, they still have stakes. You look at maybe Heinz, the Heinz, they're not doing well, family is doing very well. So any of the family companies, at one point of time, they have to let go and hand it over and become, if they don't do that, if you look at companies in India which were there in the Sensex in 1990 and see whether they're there today, 80% of them are not there.
Not there.
And if you look at companies in America, in the Dow Jones Index for the 100 years, only one company is left. And all of them have the change. So you have to make the transition. If you don't make the transition, you're going to lose all your investments and you're going to be left with nothing. You come back to a starting point.
But you know, you might draw the examples from other countries more. There's something called the, I mean, I'm not contrarian to what you're saying, but there's something still called the DNA of how companies are run in each country. Now, when it comes to China, it is state-owned, state-controlled. Although there may be many other exceptions, Lenovo is a great exception, but the DNA of Chinese success model is state-owned. The DNA of US is highly capitalistic, publicly owned, the real market economy. The DNA of India still seems to be founder-owned, whether you like it or not. There are always exceptions.
And there's a reason for that.
Although you said that the transition has to happen, Meena said the transition has to happen, but it doesn't happen so quickly.
It's a function of how competitive the market is. The Indian market is still not very competitive. There are barriers to competition, and there is a capture of the regulator by certain corporations, so you carry on. The moment you become more competitive, you'll see what happened in America happening here. It's happened in England. It's happened very well. It don't happen in Japan. The culture is very different. It don't happen in Korea. Asia has got a challenge. The whole of Asia has got a challenge because the markets are not very competitive. Everybody gets together. They want to control the market.
Suresh, those are extremely successful, right? In many occasions, they're almost iconic, and those are big shoes for people to fill in. By my own reckoning, when it looks back on many of these founders and successful founders, I think their legacy will be partial if they have not been able to build successful succession within their own companies, right? So we get taken in by what we actually see in our own phase of professional life, which, spanning over about 10, 15 years. But I think history will be far more objective in evaluating whether that transition they were able to do successfully or not. And at that point in time, whatever we actually see today and discuss the names of the companies, be it in tech sector or anywhere else, and you may be right, because we actually came from a legacy post-British era, how some of these founders, they were the captains of the industries, and they led it very, very successfully. But really, the legacy will be incomplete if they are not able to actually pass on the baton. And for that, as we heard in Rahul's talk as well, if they are unable to actually move away, if they are unable to let go, if they are unable to groom, if they are unable to identify, if they are unable to actually give them the stage, we talk about sustainability of companies. We will be there to evaluate, and the world will be there to actually evaluate. But if not done, I think that would be hugely suspect for those companies to continue to succeed.
Sorry, only.
Yes, sir.
I just want to add something there, which is that the environment is changing so much, which is whether the kind of technology that's there, the kind of expectation, the way the consumers come in to interact with the companies, that you need to probably not just get successors, but get a new generation of people to come in to understand those trends. even the existing people who are just one level below may not really understand that. Now, either you bring in younger people, very young people, I mean, maybe in the 20s, maybe in the early 30s, to positions of, if not leadership, but certainly influencing the leadership. I think that is something which is very, very critical for succession planning, especially for companies who are anyone, actually, anybody who's in any consumer-facing space. The change is absolutely dramatic. And just the people who are running the companies, or just the people who have been in the business for the last 20 years will not even recognize some of those impacts, which the younger generation is able to spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Rob.
So this is quite interesting for me as well, from just looking at it from a cricketing perspective as well. And you see, there's always this challenge of when do you retire and when do you move on, even in cricket.
Yep.
And you know, people say, oh, you stayed on for too long.
Or
Or
when
you
you
look at
get back the retired person once again.
Yeah, no, I mean, sort of when do you move on? And I think sometimes people do stay on longer, or people are perceived to stay on longer. I guess because it's the same personality traits that actually makes them successful in the first place. I mean, at least in cricket. I mean, when you look at a really successful cricketer and you say, why was he successful? You know, one of the things that would come to mind was he never gave up in spite of all kinds of difficulties. He always found answers to questions, you know, whenever throughout his career. You're faced with so many questions and you always find answers. Comes a stage in your life where you're struggling and you're not doing well, like Mohan is saying, you know, I was getting bored all the time. But there's a side of you and there's a mindset in you which has actually made you successful, which actually tells you, I can find a solution to this. I can find an answer to this. You know, I am there. I am the man. You know, because all your life you have that self-belief and that confidence, and it's a very, very difficult time. You know, obviously in sport you're lucky because your body starts telling you as well. I mean, you get up in the morning and you need a physio for 1 hour every evening. You know, then you know it's time to move on. But it's a huge challenge, and I've seen that. Well, myself, I faced it, and I've seen that with a lot of other sportsmen.
Suresh, I just want to take another example from cricket. What the IPL did to India was to open up the marketplace.
Yeah.
Suddenly you had 8 teams, right, in IPL?
Yeah.
You had 8 teams, 15 players in each teams. You had 45 days of games. You had foreign players coming in. The market was wide open, competitive. It's all about money. It's all about winning. And then you suddenly had all these players coming, showing their talent. And all the old stories about regionalism, getting people from various states come in, and all that is gone. And you had a new generation of people who came up who are just focused on success, who are focused on execution, focused on doing well, playing with the best players in the world, and doing very well. And the same thing for the economy. Open up the economy, get foreign players to come in, get local players to come, make sure the local players are not handicapped by creating conditions for the more of the accomplished foreign players to come, which happened in IPL, right? You got only 4 players or 5 players in each team. The rest were all from India. Open up the market, have competition, make it incentive-based and reward, and you'll see a new upsurge of leadership coming up. So you need to have competition, open competition to get leadership to solve this problem about some people sticking on and succeeding for long.
So Mohan, when I put myself in the shoes of a large company promoter, which is not scarce in India, you know, I have 2 different views which come in. This is a big puzzle. It's not planned for me in the panel, but this is a puzzle, the luxury of all of you here. One set of people genuinely feel that time has come for them to delegate, for them to play an investor role, play a little bit of a board role, and get the operations stay afloat, give someone else the responsibility to run it. But there's still some people who say that in this VUCA environment, as we define, this is not the time to give it to them. This is the time when I have to be there calling the shots. Otherwise, we may pass the opportunity on to stabilize the company. There's still, you know, there's a group which I can't name, but they keep saying, look, there was a time, there was Mr. Phillips, there was Mr. Siemens, there was Mr. Hext, there was Mr. Ford, and there was anyone, but they transitioned over a number of years, of 5 decades or 6 decades before professional managers took the companies over and ran it well. We can't be forced to do it in 5 years or 10 years. It's a long drawn process. But do you think we need to do it snappily, or do you think we really have to give it a process?
I think Meena gave the answer. The answer is the rapidity of change. Yeah. When change is extremely rapid, you get outdated very fast, and the next generation gets outdated even faster. So, you know, there's a vacuum. Whereas when the steady pace, you know, you are still around, the next generation can come up and do that because both of them are relevant. So when the rapid change takes place, you have to understand the trend and change. If you stay too long, then you're gone. And that's what is happening now in areas tuned to rapid change and high growth.
Louisa, one other time for you. Does Chinese companies have structured succession planning for the top job?
Yeah, I just want to correct you first that if there is a success formula for China, it is not so simple as a state-owned enterprise.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the best and the most successful and well-known companies around the world are probably not the state-owned enterprise. I think that the privately held companies in China contribute to probably not as large percentage of GDP, but a significant percentage of GDP, and certainly employ probably in aggregate more employees than the state-owned enterprise. So I just want to correct you on that. And the future of China is not going to be on state-owned enterprise. The future of China is going to be about the privately held company who learn along the way to bring China out of China. So just in terms of the succession planning, I think one of the most determining whether the Chinese economy is going to go to the next stage, one of the most crucial is how the first generation wealth pass on to second generation wealth. This is a topic of immense importance. As we all know that most of the Chinese privately held companies are first generation, the Rockefeller of the world today. How does the Rockefeller going to pass on the wealth to the next many generations to come in China? I think is a very big topic that I don't think there is an answer. I think that now, not only because of the young generation, because we have only one child policy in China, we also have a tremendous opportunity for the young to be going overseas. There has been a lot of these old family founders who either sell to private equity firms who can then come in and professionalize the organization. Obviously, there are many founders who had gone IPO as a way to equitize their investment. But many companies, as you know, is now going the other way, is to privatize again. So I think the how to pass on not only just succession planning, but pass on the wealth from first generation without leaving China, I think is a huge question mark. I do believe that the founder, if you take a broad survey among the largest privately held companies, the founder, what will be the strategy to make sure that the succession planning, I think that most of them would tend to want to sell, also want to ask for foreign investment to help them to professionalize. I don't think that the answer is to pass on to your son or to pass on your children. I think that this is obviously opening up a world of a lot of opportunity for foreign money as well as for foreign investment.
Okay, super. And another debate, ladies and gentlemen here, is that when you look for a successor, assuming that we look for a successor, do we need to look inside, name the guy before or name the lady before, or continuously look outside? There's, I believe, a Chinese philosophy which says one eye in and one eye out. So should we always, at the board, Mohan, you've been on the board of such leading companies, so should you always worry about homegrown talent? Or should you always look outside and say what's not obvious may also be exciting, may also be actually the solution? So is there a mix, or it's just that you take it by what happens company by company?
Well, I think I would say that you need to look in both places with a bias towards the internal leadership. Because if you don't have a bias towards internal leadership, you will not grow the internal leadership. And please remember, an outsider coming into a very large, complex organization is going to take a lot of time. It's not easy. And you've got to do business. And people within the organization, if they have a very inbuilt culture, have to accept the outsider as somebody, and they don't accept outsider unless there's a crisis. I mean, some great companies which have got internal leadership, and till they got a crisis, they didn't accept an outsider. They never had an outsider. So getting an outsider is, at the top level, is difficult. But if you get an outsider at level 2 and 3, and they become part of the organization in the last 2, 3 years or 4 years, then they rise up, it becomes easier to understand. So I would say that you need to build leadership at level 2 and 3, and that leadership has to be very global for large corporations, and then allow people to come up and decide who is the best.
Wonderful. Meena, your views?
So, I think for very large corporations, it probably makes a lot of sense. But I think those companies which are in the in fairly
Startup phase.
either a startup phase or in the areas which are more technical, very cutting edge, then, and things are changing very rapidly. You may not be able to find somebody inside who has that kind of knowledge or vision of what's rapidly changing out there in the market. At which point you may be forced to bring in someone who can actually change the direction of the company so that it still remains relevant. So I think there is horses for courses for very large complex organizations, perhaps this, but the people who are working in the edge will probably not be able to find that.
I'll pass you on this question, come back to you, Rahul, on this. Pratik, your views.
But Suresh,
So-
yep. Optimus asked him in IPL, you know, if you get a leader from outside, does it work
I
as
know.
against homegrown leader? Because he's got experience.
No, I want to get him into some other controversial subject, but I'll reserve that for
So
about
I'll keep it brief. I think it's been well summarized by both Mohan as well as Meena. My own view is, and maybe the bias comes from the large company perspective, is that I think you've got to actually have the ability to be able to build leadership from within. If you have not been able to actually do that, it shows somewhere in the whole process something didn't work, right? Either from a succession point of view or from the identification point of view. I do not, so this debate is not, Suresh, about whether you should look inside or outside. I think you look for who's the right guy.
Yeah.
If you have the right guy within, fantastic. So you don't have to actually struggle with this debate, why am I actually putting someone from within? And you're unlikely to actually find, if a company is in trouble, is not doing well, someone who's the knight in shining armor who's going to ride in and be able to set your issues. It's not going to happen. So if these are long-term fixes, you have to actually work on being able to actually address those yourself, right? You can do it once, you can perhaps do it one more time, but the bias has to be, as Mohan also mentioned, the tilt has to be on leadership being groomed from within. But the caveat being that person is the right and the appropriate person. If that person is not the right and appropriate person, tough luck. You've got to actually look at whoever can from outside be able to actually step in. And that, by the way, equally applies whether it's large corporation or whether it's a startup or a mid-sized company.
Excellent. Louisa, your view?
Suraj, there's no doubt that there are statistics, there are study that any CEO of multinational company, Fortune 500 firm, that the internal succession planning, CEO candidate come from within, by far outperform and delivering values and share prices. So that's probably for large corporations. And why is that? Because large corporations had the bandwidth and the focus. Succession planning is not just about, okay, today I need a successor. It's a very focused, deliberate plan, not only just by accident. Now, if I am the owner of a family organization, and the question is to appoint internal or to appoint external, I think there will be many questions before that I would ask myself. I.e., is if I'm the founder of a company going forward, it is owning a share or owning a voice that is more important, or seeing the company that will go beyond you and seeing your purpose of your founding a company more important than owning a share or owning a voice. I think that the success who follow a very strong will, or if it is founder not strong, it's also unlikely the company could be strong. So I think that the answer to that is really that the purpose of handing over is what's the ultimate objective. If the ultimate objective is to let the company and the way you found the company, because there's also many, many ways, the very first beginning of anyone who wants to start a company or business is to really, you want to build a company or you want to start a business. I think that in many ways that there's many, many steps before you need to ask that question before you then say appoint internally or externally. Because I think that if you have to ask that question, and the answer is not so obvious to you, then I'm certain that the answer would be to appoint somebody outside.
Outside. Okay, super. I've been told that we're running out of time.
We
Rahul
are pretty
the
close.
question.
Suresh, ask
Ask
Rahul
the
that
question. I always thought, Rahul, in Indian cricket team, the next captain is not as clearly identified as Australians do it, or as probably English do it. In Australia, if you see when Border was the captain, Steve Waugh was already an anointed captain. When Steve Waugh was the captain, it was already clear that Michael Clark. Oh no, next was Michael Clark, or was it after Steve Waugh? Ricky Ponting, of course. Ricky Ponting, and then Michael Clark. Now, it's pretty clear. Succession, passing on the baton is pretty clear. In India, when Saurav quit, it was not sure whether Rahul Dravid will take over, whether Sachin will be brought back, or whether it will be a greenhorn, or hence Dhoni eventually stabilized. So even in cricket, even in sport, we are a bit uncertain for succession.
I think in sport and in cricket, I think one of the most important things for a leader is that you actually have to have the right to have a place in the side in the first place. So which is why sometimes the teams, is not necessarily a clear succession plan, because, who's to say in 3 years' time, you might anoint him as the next leader, but if he's not playing well or if he gets injured, which, can happen in sport, what happens next? I think Australia is probably the exception to the rule. They've been lucky, I think, that they've had this succession of really good players who've earned the right to be in the team, come in one after the other. So I think they've been different in that sense. I mean, if you look at England, they've had their issues as well. India, to some extent, we've been, relatively lucky. I guess, I guess all of us know who we think is going to be the next Indian captain, and it's already spoken about. But who's to say that in 2 years' time he's not injured, or Virat doesn't get Virat is out of form. So that's why I think in cricket teams people are very cautious about actually appointing the next leader. I think that becomes a little bit of an issue. But it's just been interesting for me. I mean, we had an interesting choice to make now with the IPL and the retention policy. So I've moved on from captaining the Rajasthan Royals, and we were sort of contemplating the next season. And I think one of the big choices for us was who was going to captain the side, going forward. We obviously had the choice of going back into the fresh auction and looking for, more recognized or well-known leaders and trying to buy them in and trying to build a team around them, or to look internally in someone like Shane Watson, who'd been a part of the franchise for 6 years and is identified with the franchise. I'm glad listening to people here that we've made the choice of going internally and gone with Shane Watson, who I think is a really good choice, and I think we really made a great effort to, and I think we're lucky to be able to retain him. Because I agree with that he actually now, someone with Watson was that he actually identifies the culture of the franchise. He knows all the players, he knows the management, he knows the coaching staff. And I think that's, obviously makes a big difference. If we'd got someone in from outside, he would have had to start all over again. So I think that's, that's a choice we've made, and I guess the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. But I'm glad to know that, most of the people here would have gone internal.
I know Priya is threatening me with dire consequences if I continue. So last wrap up, 30 seconds, rapid fire. Mohan, do you think India is fully geared up to get the next generation leaders, mint the leaders as the subject says?
Not yet.
Not yet. Great. We are still in business. Meena, your opinion?
I think the talent depth in India is amazing. They've not been given the chance to demonstrate how capable they are. I don't have any doubt about the depth that is there over here available.
for Dravid, it's a little bit of a changed question. Do you think Indian team will have an Indian coach sometime?
We're getting there, maybe someday.
Someday. That could be Rahul himself. BCCI doesn't restrict you anymore. You can say yes or no.
Well, I've got other things on my mind at the moment.
Pratik?
I feel certainly more confident. I mean, this is a age-old debate. At each stage, we talk about whether we have next generation of leaders to be able to take from where we are to the next helm. And I think we have been able to traverse the journey fairly well. And no reason why we should not have the same confidence in the existing set of leaders to be able to carry the baton forward. So I certainly feel quite confident.
Quite confident. Luisa, you've seen Indians, you've worked with them, you saved some of them, you pushed some of them. So you think we guys are capable of leading a global enterprise?
I'm not an expert on India as a country or an Indian as a CEO, but I just see more CEO of global companies are Indian than Chinese, so that gives me confidence. But more importantly, I think that one strength I can tell about Indian and in general and about CEO probably that I visited a temple today and I can see spirituality plays such an important part of India that in today's world, if you can believe in that we go beyond our body and that we are controlled by some supernatural power, and that could humble us. That will make us, our company, our country, our individual, go beyond just where we are today. I do believe that if that spirituality is what makes India as a country and what Indian so special, that I was willing to bet on it.
Super, great. That was wonderful. It was just amazing to hear all the views, and I'm sure we haven't solved any problems in leadership as yet, but we have some solution coming up in our minds. Thank you so much, everybody, to contribute to this discussion, this wonderful diversity. I think we should throw it open to the audience for asking questions.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You know, sometimes I wonder what's really left to say on this topic. There's been so many interesting points of view and discussion so far. But may I, if somebody has a question right away? Oh, 2 hands. Great, great, great. So 2 quick questions. The lady in front to the panel. You had a question. Yeah, go ahead. And it's a question, not a statement. Go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Trinette. I head the hiring function at Qualcomm. So, Rahul, just in case you're wondering, we are hiring, and I'll be happy to take a look at your resume. Just kidding.
only played cricket, no other skills.
All right. My question to you is this. So we spoke about new gen CEOs and leaders, right? So in today's world, be it cricket, be it the corporate world, be it business, one of the key traits of a leader is to be aggressive, right? Is being aggressive, and we've seen that. So my question to you is this. How do you manage, you being the master of calm, how do you manage to stay calm for such a long period, right? Especially in test cricket, and at the same time, stay focused and be aggressive and, focus, basically balance between calm and aggression? That's my question.
For me, actually, it was, personally, it was a little bit of a trial and error in the sense that when I first started playing cricket, when people said something to me or sledged me or said something, I would react. And it sort of didn't really work well for me from the point of view that, I ended up getting out or I went out of my bubble or my space. So I just worked over time. I sort of realized over time that it was sort of best for me to stay in my own space and in my own bubble. I mean, I don't believe that aggression is something that you need to show outwardly, even on a sporting field. I mean, look, I think each one is different and each personality is different. So I'm not saying that showing aggression outwardly is wrong. If that is your personality and that is the way you express yourself, then, go for it. But just because someone doesn't show a lot of aggression, I mean, I've very rarely seen someone like a Sachin Tendulkar show a lot of aggression on a cricket field, but he has the most number of runs and an incredible record. So I've seen enough in sport to say that aggression is not necessarily something that you show outwardly. I think it's something that I think it comes within you. And if you're that kind of personality, then you're that kind of personality. Some of the, the most difficult bowlers that I played and the people that I feared the most was actually people who didn't say a lot to me. But you knew that, even at the end of the day, even after the tea session, they would always be at you. They were aggressive internally. They wanted to get you out. And there were a lot of guys who, would abuse you or say stuff at you, but you knew that it was all huff and puff. And so if you're still there at tea time, they didn't have the energy. So I think, it just works for different people, and you've just got to figure out what is, I think, what works best for you.
I think that was a good
Thank you.
answer.
If you face a crisis every other game, it becomes a new normal, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman at the back, please go right ahead and scream out your question, just in case you don't get the mic on time.
Just a quick one. What are the 2-3 qualities or competencies a new generation CEO would be required to have?
So competencies for new generation, for the millennials. Who would you like to address this question to?
Anybody.
Okay, is there anybody here? No, there isn't. So,
Pratik, go ahead.
Pratik, go for it.
So the whole theme of this conference is about VUCA, as Priya described. And I think one reason why there is so much of emphasis on the new generation leaders, perhaps they have the appetite to be able to actually deal with it much better, be it in terms of the changing landscape out there in the marketplace, be it in terms of constant volatile world we live in. And it's a lot about being able to actually stay on course and run the existing, which is pretty much getting us the bread and butter. At the same time, be able to change the wheels of the business and drive some of those changes, which is going to actually lead to and build that runway of success for the organization. Mind you, you get a leader who perhaps has got just another few years to go. The flip side, and I personally do not think it's so much of an age factor, whether the leader has to be in 30s or 40s or is in is close to retirement. But what happens is when you actually get a leader who's fairly late in his own career or her own career, they get very protected about the legacy, and they end up being more in the maintenance mode. And therefore, your ability to take some of those risks, place some of those bets, be able to drive some of those change.
We will have this conversation over dinner. I think we've thought about things in a new way, really, and this topic is so critical, so central to India's growth going forward. I want to thank you all for just applying your mind and being instinctive and responding with what you know and what your experience tells you. And I think this has been tremendous for us, for me as a listener, and for our audience as well, I'm sure. Suresh, thank you for your direction, for your thoughts, and drawing out those very interesting insights from our panelists.
I hope you now agree that cricket and business can intersect. And
I'll have to say my name is still Priya Chetty Rajagopal.
When you use the phrases like, let's put some runs on the board and then spend money, you were discussing
I will at least now pretend to understand. And I will do some research. I'll give Rahul a quiet call on the phone and say, Rahul, what does this really mean? And then he will say, just respond like this and I'll get your immediate kudos. So thank you. Thank you. There are so many more questions, as I said. I know we could have gone on a little further, but we started so well, but we've gone about 20 minutes or 30 minutes beyond our time. I want to say, on behalf of the RGF team, a very, very warm and heartfelt thanks to you, our speakers and our panelists. I want to thank our interactive and delightful guests for a memorable evening. For us, it's just been an enormous pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to meet and to interact with you. There are people who have stayed on from certain events. There are people who have, decided to come by for this, and I'm so grateful that you have chosen to be here today with us. Our Bangalore team, I must tell you, has been hard at work to set up this event, and I would like very much for them to stand up for a few seconds to just be able to say, for me to be able to say thank you. So Bangalore team, can you just raise your hands? All right. Well, great show, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our Outstation India team next, we have a lot of our dear colleagues from different cities in India who are here. So can I request our visiting team from outside of Bangalore to stand up and just say a quick hello? Yep. Our global team, would you please stand up, and we will say our good nights and talk over dinner. But global team, please. Thank you so much for being here. All of us at RGF look forward to catching up and relaxing over a chat with you at dinner. We have a very tiny little token signed by Rahul Dravid, and we hope that it's always useful to you, given today's information-centric, very wild life. Rahul, of course, will sue me for his hand almost falling off with many, many signatures that he had to do, but thank you so much for being so kind, Rahul, really. Thanks again, folks, for being here tonight, and let's look at many, many more opportunities to interact in the future. I want to end with one of my most favorite quotes from Albert Einstein, which is, strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value. I think all of us can resonate with that. We all hope that we can continue to add value to you today and in the future. And I hope in that lies our success. So if I can just ask for, do we have a toast? We have a toast for, okay, doesn't matter, no worry. So a toast to great times, good times, this future, this year, forever, always. So good night and God bless. But before that, a quick thank you to our panelists. Can I just request Bhavya to come up and present a bouquet? Can I request Mr. Kuzuhara to please come up and present the first bouquet to Rahul? A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rahul. Mr. Shingo Toyama, if you could present a bouquet to Meena Ganesh. Can I request Mr. Yamamoto, who is here, to present a bouquet to Mr. Mohandas Pai? I must tell you, your neighbors, practically a street away, so. May I request Mr. Jason Decoret to please present a bouquet to Ms. Louisa Wong? And I'm going to request next, I hope Sanjay Mutal and Mr. Anil Kumar are here. If you can just step up, please. Sanjay, Anil. I'm going to request Sanjay, and Sanjay is the head of RGF Management Search, and Anil Kumar, who is making his way from the back, is head of RGF Select.